Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome with your host, Deisy
and Anthony Martinez. Welcome back to Spirit Speaks. Today, we want to kind of talk about a theme that's, I guess, I guess it's a little controversial, but not really. I think everybody, should talk about it. I guess, more comfortably, more openly.
And have discussions about it, not arguments. It is okay to agree to disagree.
Right, absolutely. I think we come to this understanding, all the time. Conversations are meant to be, you get to know a little bit about the other person, where they're coming from, their perspective and stuff like that. So today's theme is going to be gender roles, gender identity, and sexual identity as well, right?
Yes.
So, we kind of talked about it too, because I'm the youngest in my family. Daisy's the oldest in her family. And being raised, I guess, in these households, especially Latino households, but it probably goes out to many different races, you know what I mean? But the hierarchy or in a family is always so different, and a lot of the times we feel like we carry a certain load or a kind of certain responsibility within, our gender roles or, our sibling roles as well, So me being, I guess, a younger child, I kind of had to, I feel like I was great. I was blessed enough to observe a lot. You're kind of like the observer, so you're seeing a lot of what your siblings are doing, what your mother and father are doing, and you're kind of, well, my personal thing is like we're kind of thrown on the side,
That's what you think?
Well,
I feel like the youngest ones get it the easiest because the parents make the mistakes with everyone else, and with you, it's like
no. That's why I feel like it's different because they just at this point with me they just don't give a shit. They're just like, all right, you know what I mean? I think with the firstborn is different because it's obviously they're hands on, they're fully like immersed in them. They have to be, and there's a lot of pressure in being the first child. A lot of the times, if you're like the first born, right, and you have siblings, sometimes you're also, being the mothers as well, or the parent as well. A lot of them get that load where they're taking care of their younger siblings and stuff like that. So, but in my case, I feel like I just never related to none of my brothers or sisters. Like I just felt like I was a lone wolf in that sense. I was just like, I have to do what I have to do to defend myself. You're kind of always pushed in the corner, because you are getting bullied in a way. You kind of come out of the motherfucking hierarchy, gain the respect of your peers, of your mom, and also you're not being looked at. You know what I mean? So you do feel kind of like a ghost some way or another. And sometimes you crave for the attention that nobody has the energy to give, especially when we're all growing up, we all have shit to do. So I kind of was understanding that. So a lot of the times as a younger child, I grew up with these kind of things where like, oh, I'm craving attention, I'm craving intimacy that was never, given to me in a sense, compared to like, let's say my older, like, sibling or my middle sibling, you know what I mean? But I feel like being the youngest again, we have a lot of guides or a lot of things that we see in other people that kind of like they give us advice, or it might not seem like it, but if you're observing, you could take away from your siblings' mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of mature faster, I think, because you're kind of like constantly seeing the bullshit going around. You know what I mean?
I think that, again, different households, different values, different ways of being raised. I feel like the youngest one in our side, actually.
Speaking of your perspective.
Yeah, my perspective, the youngest one. So I am the oldest. I have one brother for my mother and my father, and I was mom and dad, not just to him, but also
Absolutely.
to my mother as well, because my mother just went through a lot and was very controlled by my dad. So when they separated, she didn't really know how to act. But even before that, like I was very overprotective of both of them, and a lot of things did fall on top of me. So I learned to cook at 12. By 12, I was like already prepping meals and actually selling foods, and I helped my mother make ends meet. Looking for a way to help my mom, but it was always like things were expected from me. Like I have to know,
Absolutely.
even
No
if
pressure.
no one's talking to me about it. Like how you say, like sometimes with the first kid we experiment, but I was pretty much left alone to figure it out. Right. So I had to figure things out, and then as I figured things out, I would show my brothers. So like once I became 13 and my brother became 12, because that's the age that I started cooking, I was like, like I'm not doing this alone. Like I learned to cook at this age, so I'm gonna teach you how to cook so that we can take turns. And I made that a rule, right? Because that wasn't something that my mom would have done. But
That's smart sister shit.
yeah, yeah. And then my brother used to blackmail me with that. Like whenever we used to fight, he'd be like, I want some mom if you cook for me for a month. Or if you I'll let you go out. I'll let you. He instead was like, I'll let you, because I used to be kept on lock. So I was old enough to cook, to clean, to take care of my brother, take care of my little cousin, but I wasn't allowed to talk on the phone. I wasn't allowed to go outside.
Why
I
do
was
you think?
My mom was just very old school. My mom was
Yeah.
so I also feel like a lot of our parents. My mom had me when she was really young, like a month and a half after becoming 17. So I feel like there's a lot of projection there. I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I made, so therefore I'm gonna keep you on lock so that you're not making. And it actually backfire on her.
Yeah,
because
I think it's like a lot of Latinas.
A lot of
like,
Latinas, yeah.
They perpetuate the cycle, especially with the matriarchy. Like,
Yes,
and they think it's for the best. Like, oh, because it happened to me, I'm gonna
avoid
raise
from
my
this from happening to you, or you making the same
But they
mistakes.
repeat it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's always like a catch-22. You know what I mean? They mean the best, but I don't think they realize that they are still pressuring, their values and their traumas onto you.
Onto
Because they've never healed the cycle. Because a lot of us, we go through life not realizing the cycles that we are perpetuating because we don't explore ourselves spiritually.
Yeah, I wasn't even allowed to like speak on the phone. Like, even with my
Crazy.
family,
You weren't
like
allowed to voice yourself.
I wasn't allowed to say anything. Like again, I specifically was on lock, and it was a lot of her like, I don't want you to repeat my same mistakes.
Oh.
And I mean, which is, since I was little, I was very aware of what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do, and I knew that repeating her mistakes was definitely not something in my plans, right? Like I didn't want to do that. So I kind of made that rule with my brother, like we're gonna do things half and half, and it became one of those things where like, yeah, if he's cleaning, I'm cooking. If I'm cooking, he's cleaning. So my brother and I made sure he played that role. Now,
it's a good system.
A very good system. Eventually, I moved out when I was 16, and I was adopted by my aunt. My aunt has 4 kids. Her daughter, who's 4 months younger than me, and her 3 boys. And now my aunt used to get a lot of shit because people used to say that she was too liberal. My aunt wasn't liberal. My aunt was just very realistic. We're teenagers. If we go out, I'm giving you a curfew based on where you're going. So she did like the time traveling and everything to see how long it will take us, right? So people used to like shit on her a lot because of that, but my aunt was actually very strict with us.
Yeah. What's funny is like my older sister is a female, right? It's a girl, and a lot of the things you're saying and the same rules apply to her as well. You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like it is different when it comes to a girl older sibling as opposed to like a brother older sibling. Like the pressures are completely different. You know what I mean?
So what was crazy with this situation was that my cousin and I had a 3 a.m. curfew, right? We were like 16,
That's
17.
Pretty good.
So we were lit 3 a.m. Like again, she was very like logical. If you're going to a party, this is the time I expect you to be back. If you're going to so put it like this: if we're going to the movies, this is how she saw it. You're going to the movies, you leave at 9. By the time you get there, it's 10. Until the movie starts 10:30, 11. The movie's about 2 hours, so you're coming out at 1. And now you're traveling from the city to Queens. That's another hour at that time. So you're coming home between 2 and 3 a.m. So my aunt was very, again, realistic, right?
But it's lucky you had an aunt so it's not really like your mother.
But again, her daughter was my age, so the rules apply to both of us. And if Joanna is going out, she's going out with Daisy. If Daisy's going out, she's going out with Joanna. But the funny thing with her too was that if you both want to go out, depending on where we were going, she would also send her a younger son with us, Brian, who I consider my little brother. He considers me his little sister because again I grew up with them. But my little cousins really weren't aware that I wasn't their sister. Like they didn't find out I wasn't their sister until I was like they were like 15.
You know, I'm flabbergasted because my sister, like, they would have that girl on a lock down.
No, my mom had me on lockdown.
No,
my mom,
my dad, like it was so bad. I feel bad, for, like, you know, as being a younger sibling. You know, dude, she never went out. They
never. Again, I wasn't allowed to talk to my dad's side of the family. I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone. And mind you, the store where when I used to live with my mother, the store was literally right next door to my house, right? So if I needed to go to the store or if I needed something from the store, it's like you go out with your brother or you let your brother go instead of you. But that's crazy because
going with my sister everywhere.
And that's crazy because like yo, he's younger than me and you're letting him go to the store without me, but I can't go to the store by myself, but yet I'm allowed to take care of him. I'm allowed to like cook. So once I turned 13, I became like a little rebellious because she still wanted to leave us at a babysitter's house, my mother, right? And now at this time, I'm going to junior high school, and my mother expected me to go to the babysitter's house in the morning, and from there go to school, and then from school to come back and stay at the babysitter's house. But my babysitter, since she had other kids and they were all going to they were in the same grade as my brother, they were going to a different school. They're in elementary, I'm in junior high, so she couldn't take me. So I will have to walk to junior high by myself. So when I found that out, I'm like, wait, you want me to walk to junior high by myself and then come back and stay at the babysitter's house with my brother? I'm not doing that. And she was like, no, my mom wanted to force me, but obviously, again, I was a little rebellious. So when I started junior high school, I went to pick up my brother from the babysitters, and she expected me to stay. And I'm like, no, I'm taking my brother home. And that's when I made it my mission at 13. I'm grabbing you from here. We used to we were going to school in Woodside. So I would take the train from 52nd all the way to 111 because that's where I live. And that's when I started doing things like on my own. But even so, that was the only time. Like my mom knew she couldn't find me on that because I was going to do it regardless. And my babysitter had no way of stopping me. And it was one of those things that whatever I told my brother would do because I was his parent. Right?
The older sibling.
The older sibling, and I was his parent. I was more of his parent than my mother and my father ever would.
13
and I'm still 13. I mean? So my little brother would look at me and the babysitter's like, no, Daisy, you can't go. I'm like, I'm not asking you. Washington, come, let's go. And I would take him with me. So, and that's when my mom understood, like, okay, Daisy's gonna be, that's when I started being independent. Now, when I moved out with my aunt, it was very different. Like I said, my aunt gave us that curfew. My aunt was very big on, you need to do things on your own. You need to be independent. You need to not be afraid. Like it was very different than what my mother went through, and my aunt would never project her life on us the same way that my mom did with me. And again, we had a curfew that we were till 3 a.m. and we were 16, 17, right? So her son, her first boy, Brian, right now he's 30, I'm 39, so there's a 9-year difference there. When he turned 18, because Latina mothers are very overprotective of their sons. One of the reasons my mother, my brother, and I don't have a relationship is because of that. Because so this day, everything that my brother does, my mom has an explanation or an excuse, and like you have to understand him. I don't understand. At this point, we're almost 40. Like he's a grown man, he's not a child, and you're still treating him like a child. So that to me doesn't rock, right? But now with my aunt, it was so different because when Brian turned 18, mind you, now he's 18, he's old, he's still living at home. Yo, you know what his curfew was? Being a boy, his curfew was midnight. And Brian used to tell I used to call my aunt mommy, so I refer to her as my mom. So Brian used to tell her, be like, yo, ma, how come my curfew is midnight, but when Daisy and Joanna were my age, their curfew was 3 o'clock in the morning? And my aunt will always respond the same way. Well, Daisy and Joanna, they used to cook, they used to clean, they used to take care of all three of you while I worked. They did laundry, they went to the supermarket, they made sure everything was taken care of before they went out. What do you do? And it's true, like the boys in this family, the boys were very baby.
That's also the gender role.
The gender role. The boys were very baby, so they weren't expected to cook, clean. And with Joanna and I, we had a system. I hated cleaning, and Joanna didn't know how to cook, and she like really wasn't good with kids. So I would take care of the kids and do all the cooking in the house, and Joanna would do all the cleaning, and that was our system. And we would have everything done by the end of the night, laundry, everything. Like my aunt didn't have to worry about anything, you know, because we as females we have to help. It's something that you have
But
to
also, I want to
do.
also point the fact that that's just like, that's just like basic necessities. I feel like those kind of rules should pertain to
Everyone, not
equal,
just
like, yeah,
females.
like guy and girls. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like a lot of these, upbringings, we give these people these responsibilities, and sometimes they turn rebellious. Like, like my mom, she taught all three of us that we have to do cook, clean, all that good stuff. And I think it made me more aware of, like, just well balanced, because sometimes I don't have that ick that a lot of guys have. Oh, like, I gotta, I'm a guy. I'm not supposed to fucking be cooking or cleaning. And I
Yeah,
think
and it's again basic
it's
necessity.
basic necessities that are perpetuated by, the toxic household. And once you start realizing that these roles are meant for you to kind of, like, be better and learn how to keep your mind sane, your house sane. It's something that it's universal. You know what I mean? And sometimes we don't take it that way. We believe that we need to rebel against the norm. Like, it's unfair, really. And because, let's say, I'm a guy. My role, like growing up, a lot of us guys, we do have flexibility of, like, basically doing whatever the fuck we want sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be
100%.
repercussions, in the sense that, like, we could do something that, we could come home late, or, do not do anything. There'll be repercussions, but it wouldn't be as, like, like it's expected of us almost, you know what I mean? And it's like sometimes, us guys, we could take advantage of that, and actually, like, once you start growing up, there's rules, right? But the guys might come home like drunk as fuck, you know what I mean? Or sometimes they could become slobs, and I could see why the mom would be, or the parents would be frustrated, with that, but it's because they've never learned. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and to me, it was actually kind of crazy. Like, at least in my situation, and like from my perspective, it was crazy that my mother had that mentality, because when she married my dad, she didn't know how to do any of these things. My dad is the one who taught her how to cook and clean and do all these things, right? Like, my dad is the one who showed all of his wives how to cook. Like, that man will be whatever, but when it comes to basic necessities and when it comes to the kitchen, my dad is a freaking professional chef. Like, he doesn't matter the time, he won't starve to death, right? So he's the one who
His
showed
mom
her.
probably taught him. You know what I mean?
And yeah, he learned obviously from my grandmother. So it's one of those things where, like, but my dad was also very like, no, la mujer tiene que ser así. Like, the woman has to cook, the woman has to clean. Like, he was very, at least with me, he was very verbal as to, a woman is only good for cooking, cleaning, and having babies. That's the only thing we're good for, nothing else, So I grew up hearing that, but in my head, I always knew that's not true. I always knew that my potential was limitless, and that I'm not obligated to just be a housewife, right? That's how I always felt. So to me, like, just that transition and living with my aunt, I think is the best thing that happened to me, because it allowed me to grow. It allowed me, like, because sometimes I think about it. If I would have stayed with my mom, my easy way out of my mom's house would have been like getting pregnant, because then I could leave. Right now, I got a baby, so let me leave. And that's not what I wanted to do. And that's also like another thing. Like, for a woman, there's so much pressure for you to like have a kid and be a mother. Like, they don't put that much pressure on men as well. And a man can have babies up to like whatever age. My grandfather's youngest kid is like 17. I have a 17-year-old uncle, right? But God forbid a woman is having kids over 40 now. All of a sudden, oh my God, like, you're too old. Like, you got to be careful, this and that. It's like so much pressure put on a woman that's unnecessary, right? Now, also, I feel like in my family too, I have cousins in Ecuador and cousins here too, who treat their wives like maids. So it's like, what are you looking for in a partner? Are you looking for someone who's your half, someone who's your equal, or are you looking for a mother or a maid, someone to take care of you? Because I see it with like I went to Peru with my two of my cousins, and the guy is younger than the female, their brother and sister, but he treats his sister like a maid. And that to me is ridiculous, because I will never, like, my brothers are not going to disrespect me like that.
No, that's why I'm saying, like, the gender roles, I think, have been kind of implanted in our society, where, we limit the human nature in that sense by only having, these responsibilities laid up upon based on your gender, right? Because we know that, like I said, it's a human thing. All of these responsibilities are human nature, right?
Yeah.
And if you're toxic enough or like you're not in balance, or you're not aware of this, you're gonna fuck up. You know what I mean? You're gonna just be confused. You're not gonna fulfill your own personal, duties or responsibilities. So I feel like as society is progressing, as human consciousness is also evolving, these gender roles, they are kind of, we're starting to see them kind of fuse together in a way. You know what I mean? Because like, yes, a woman is like back in the days, a woman's supposed to what do you call it when you just gathering berries, gathering herbs, all doing these things while the man goes hunt. In this society, we see it different. We're still pertaining to those responsibilities, as in a woman's supposed to cook and clean, and the man is supposed to go ahead and do that. But in reality, now that we're evolving, it's flowing together in a way. We're having so many people decide not to have kids, to be single, and they're finding happiness in that sense because they are fulfilling that something in their soul is telling them, I'm much more happier that way. Or you could have those moments later on in life. It's not supposed to you're not supposed to feel pressured enough. Experience life the way you want to experience life. You know what I mean?
I was reading that now there are more stay-at-home dads than there were before, and more working moms, right? And that's a big thing too now. And honestly, it depends as to how your household unfolds, right? So like whatever works for you, right? So just because you're a stay-at-home dad doesn't mean that you have less value. And I'll tell you, like, from a personal experience, one of my aunts who raised me, who's no longer here, passed away. When she married her husband, she didn't have to work. Like, she worked up until the day she married her husband, right? And then she ended up getting pregnant, and her thing was, I want to raise my kids, so I'm going to raise my kids. And she had her savings and everything, and my uncle provided for her and their three kids up until I think their youngest was 12, right? Then their roles got reversed. Now, I've been very verbal as to how the men in my family ain't shit. Like, my immediate men in my family, they really aren't shit. And when my little cousin, I think he turned 12 when she went back to work. Their roles ended up reversing because my uncle ended up having stomach cancer. So my aunt had no other choice but, like, okay, like, now I gotta take the load and I'm gonna go back to work. But my uncle became a stay-at-home dad. And my family, especially my dad, because he's so machista, like, they would talk so much shit about my uncle, like he's a mantenido, he's this, he's that. But like, you guys are failing to realize that for more than 12 years, because their youngest was 12, their oldest was already like in high school, if not more. Like, she was able to raise all of her three kids without having to work. And now that he's in a situation where he can, it's okay for her to do that. But my uncle, better than a housewife. Okay, my aunt will get home, food will be done, the kids will be taken care of. Like, and now that my aunt is in here, he still does the same thing for his daughter, right? And like, you also had to realize that not everybody's going through the same situation. Again, my uncle had cancer, like, he couldn't go back to work. There were things that was happening in his life that stopped him from going back to work. So if you're able to still provide in your household and because being a mom is a full-time job. So if you're a stay-at-home dad, that's a full-time job as well.
I have a similar story too, where like we are saying, like these gender roles, they come together. You know what I mean? Like sometimes there's gonna be periods where your responsibility.
Where we have to switch our roles.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine. Okay. You know what I mean? Like like if I could provide for my future wife, or I hope she's hopefully she's whatever, okay, but I understand if she wants her independence and she wants to go make her own money. I understand that completely too. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we both should have some kind of recognition that we still have to have responsibilities within the family, within the home, because society is trying to break down the family. The family role is being torn apart.
100%.
And the thing is, like I said, right now, like I have a friend who he's a stay at home, husband, where he's just like chilling, because his wife makes a lot of money and she's always busy, and that's cool. He is also very like organized. He keeps the
hands on.
Yeah, hands on. He does what he has to do to keep the house, the home, a home. You know what I mean? And he's also like he's very good at that. And I'm jealous sometimes. I'm like, damn, I wish I had a girl, you know what I mean? But a lot of the time that jealousy could be like, try to mask like that kind of guy. But in reality, like, yo, he's good, you know what I mean? Maybe you don't want to be, working or like, shit like that. He'd rather be at home creating a house, which is also a full-time job, as opposed to,
And then you have to look like everybody again. Everybody's life is different. Maybe okay, let's say you and I were a partner, and I'm making 200K a year, and you're making less than 100K, and now we have to use your full salary to pay for a babysitter for our kids because babysitters aren't cheap.
Yeah.
It's a whole freaking salary. So we're using your salary to pay for a babysitter. Why would I do that when you could just stay home, not have a salary, and we'll live with my salary, right? Like you had to look at everybody's role, everybody's situation is different. And it does aggravate me though, like when there is like a good stay-at-home dad and then you hear other males talking shit about that person, and it usually comes from machista males that have never or will never provide for their family. Again, example, my dad talking shit about my uncle. Sir, when have you ever provided for any one of your kids? Never. When have you ever been a good husband? Never. You've been married 3 times and never. And yet my uncle and my aunt have a steady home. They have houses here in Ecuador. They were able to build, you know, and hold down their future and put their 3 kids through college. So, but you guys are here talking shit about a man that right now he can't work for whatever reason, and that my aunt had to go back to work. And it's okay. My aunt was happy with it too. Like my aunt didn't mind because she got to raise her kids. She didn't have to leave her kids with a babysitter.
And with that being said, I think, there's stories and shit like that. Like you have to know yourself because these gender roles that are, pre-positioned to certain people, certain standards, they're slowly dissolving and becoming into like, fusing it. And that's how it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? It's a give and take. It's an ebb and flow. You know what I mean?
And just to make it clear, I actually like doing that. Like I like doing like all the female things. Like let me cook, let me clean, let me take care of you. I love doing it. I just don't want it to be expected from me. That's when I get like, pause. Who do you think you are? Like, cook for me. Who are you? Pause.
It's a pride thing too, because like I said, it's perpetuating like a lot of trauma and shit like that. Like, like I think my sister like hit me up with like I think on the phone and shit, and we were just talking and shit, and she was just like, "Oh, did you do what you have to do?" I was like, "I'm trying to remember what the fuck I have to do." And she's like, I'm like, what I have to do? And she's like, become a man. I'm like, first of all, what is it being a man? You know what I mean? And she just started dying laughing, because everybody's expecting of me to fucking have a family, 3 kids, yada yada. And if not, I'm irresponsible. I'm this and that. But yo, like,
no, like
this is my spiritual path. This is my, I'm content right now. And honestly, like,
if you know how to tell your family to mind their business, I could tell them.
I love that. Yeah, I love my family. I tell them straight up all the time, but she was just goofing because she also like, it's expected of me.
It's expected of all of us as Latinos.
It's expected. Like we're at that age where like she wants her kids to play with my kids, and I'm just like,
pause.
It's not in the stars yet for me, and they got to realize that's okay. You know what I mean? It doesn't make me less of a man. Like I'm still providing for my household in that sense, where like whatever bills need to be paid in my own immediate household, I got them. I'm working. You know what I mean? It's not like but yeah, but there's some deadbeats out there too that are just it's insane. And that's because I truly believe that they're not spiritually aware of the power that they have as a human being and the excuses we make because of these supposed gender roles that I feel like are slowly dissolving and becoming more one, and it's a team effort really. And because we identify as a certain gender doesn't mean we have to act like a certain gender. Like that's why gender identity is huge, especially now in this day and age. There was this transition or this awareness where people started becoming more open about what do they identify, the whole like non-binary, trans, or a lot of the sub, I guess like logos, I guess, that we're pertaining to ourselves. Pronouns, like what is it? Pronouns, cis, hetero, or like, and a lot of it's just like, I think spiritually we're just creating more of a divide, you know what I mean? Because of these, like, now you're putting yourself in a box in a way. And I've used to work in my work settings. We would have a lot of people kind of, I guess, being more public about like what their gender identity is. So I used to work in a very like open space IDEA based kind of environment, and I met a lot of like interesting characters. And I got to really understand their perspective and what it means when they say that they're non-binary or they don't really relate to the gender that they were born with, and it's it pisses some people off, like a lot of like weird millennials in a way. So it was like a lot of Gen Z kind of talking about like, oh, he, they, she. And growing up, I never saw that, and I don't know if it's either being put into people's minds to create this division, but I accepted all of them for who they were because I see them as spiritual in the spiritual lens. Like they're still my kin, whether they prefer to be called a girl or a guy, And some people they just don't like it. Like I used to make the mistake when they said like they them. It was a girl that I used to work with, and they basically they were basically saying like, hey, I don't pertain to these gender norms. I'm a they them because they didn't relate to being a girl because they were very like. I understand that they had this double masculine and feminine. They're also Gemini too. So you got to understand, there's people out there. There really is that they have this well balanced masculine and feminine side, but they just never knew how to explain it. So some people would be like, in my day and age, we call them tomboys or some, whatever, But
Spanish machona
yeah. But I think it's like gender identity and sexual preference is two completely different things, So I started like realizing that and working in that environment because I would offend some of these people because I would have a slip up, a grammatical slip up of like, oh yeah, she said this, and they'll be like, she, they, them. I'm like, I didn't mean it offensively. It's just like my brain is the linguistics in my brain is wired a certain way, since fucking kindergarten. So I'm gonna say these pronouns, he, she, because I'm not used to saying they, them. It's just grammatically impossible. So you can't, what I mean? My fucking brain, but I had I didn't want to offend them because I wanted them to know I accept them. Like, they were cool.
I accept you as whatever you are, right? And I hope everyone who's listening to this listens to this with an open heart and an open mind, right? Because again, we're here to have a discussion. Every head is a different mind and everyone has a different way of thinking. And I accept you for whatever you are. I accept you for whatever you identify as. However, I am not okay with you trying to force your beliefs on me or on anyone else. I read somewhere that in America, it's only, I think, 1% or 7% of the population who identify as LGBT plus, right? So now it's in the single digits. Again, I don't remember if it was 1 or 7, but it's in the single digits. And we're pushing this narrative so hard when it's in the single digits, but why we don't focus on other things. Again, you want to identify as a cat, as a dog, whatever. Do what you want. It's your life, and how you identify, it's not my responsibility. Like, I don't care. But I'm looking at facts. As much as you want to identify as a cat or a dog, you're a human freaking being. And I get the whole damn day. But again, scientifically, there's he, she, because you were either born with a penis or you were either born with a vagina, right? Like, that's it.
That's when it always gets a little bit confusing, you know what I mean? And honestly, it's a biological thing. Like we said, gender identity and sexual identity and also biological, identity, they're three separate different things, you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of the genderism, it's a mental thing in a sense of like we've had past lives where we were the opposite sex. You know
A
what I
hundred
mean?
percent. You know how
Like,
many times I say I was a man in so many past lives. I've seen it. I've seen
and
it.
it transitions to this lifetime that we're in too. And sometimes I could see where that mental thing is going, that mental battle is going on, but that's because a lot of people are not spiritually aware of who they really are, their energetic flow. The energy does not have gender. You know what I mean? Energy is just energy. It's
Energy.
everywhere. By energy is such a broad term because there's no other way to explain this spiritual phenomenon that's everywhere. So I would have conversations with these with people like that, and I kind of would just be felt so bad. I'm just like, if you only knew like that you are the universe, that you we're literally made of the same star particles, that you're more than just your body, you're more than just your gender, you're everything condensed in one. You're the universe experiencing itself for itself. And I would just kind of just, but it takes a long time to realize that thing. And these are the battles that we have to face. Like I said, sexual identity is a huge different thing that they try to again put us in this space. You know what I mean? Like we like whatever your sexual preference doesn't have to. It doesn't associate with your gender. Sometimes you know what I mean. Like I've had my best friend. He was homosexual, and since like freshman year of high school, I didn't know this about him. I he was awesome guy, funniest guy, smartest guy, and when he came out to me, this was so. This was like around 2000 and maybe 2009, and this was way before like it was a trend, where and
It became a trend. There you go.
it
It
became
became.
politicized. It became politicized, and he had to have complete trust in me. Like his human spirit had to tell me like, yo, Anthony's my friend. If he's really my friend, I could tell him like what my sexual preference is. And at first I was shocked, and I didn't know what to think in a sense, but I wanted to understand him. He was my best friend. Of course, I want to understand where is he coming from. So once we had that conversation, I was like, oh, okay, so you just like guys. He's just like, yeah. I'm like, wait, so you don't like girls? Ew, no, icky. And I'm just like, all right, more for me. You know what I mean? I was just like, okay, but hey, he continued to show me in my life that there's a lot of feminine energy within a man, and that could manifest in sexual like that or sexual preference. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same thing with me. Like, you know, people would think that I'm, gay just because I
Very
like
feminine.
a lot of feminine things. I like gardening. I like, music. I like,
You're emotional.
I'm very emotional.
Your vibe is very
Yeah,
feminine.
and
Yeah.
all these things because of again the gender roles that are pertain to those things, and sometimes I break the mold because I'm just like those gender roles doesn't identify with my sexual preference, which is obviously women. Like they're the best, and it comes with a price. It's complicated, but they're the best. I'll go. No, but
You're not
nonetheless,
complicating. You guys make it hard. Okay.
but anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's I think it's a spiritual way of not know because you don't know yourself. You don't know. You're always trying to basically these things are personal. The same thing with the same way as your religion. Like these are personal things you have to deal with. You know what I mean? You don't have to look for affirmation outside of yourself. It only just shows your insecurities within yourself that you don't believe in yourself, that you don't really, trust who you really are, that you're so scared that you have to find it from exterior places. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And it's a spiritual awareness that you have to come into terms with. You know what I mean? Like if you feel curious, experiment, try those things that that is in your mind, that wherever thought it came from, or whatever movie you've seen it from, or whatever things you're trying to mimic, go ahead then. No, and if you really enjoy those things, or you really identify as those things, it's your personal journey, as a spiritual being. In ancient civilizations, the Native Americans had what they call two-spirited people, which is, now what
You,
we
you,
would say
you
as,
explained that some image.
yeah,
I did not.
yeah, which
Yeah.
is nowadays we call non-binary, and sometimes there's moments where I feel that way too, just because I'm in that cusp where I just like, I don't, when I used to have very long hair, like I would
Oh,
feel
you did.
very, very like like feminine, like, but I know I was a guy, you know what I mean? So I feel like that non-binary, I would be considered basically two-spirited in an indigenous culture, you know what I mean? So I understand that completely, but my sexual preference again is different than that identity, my gender identity, right? And I believe that the Gen Z generation is becoming more aware of that too, that they don't feel more girl, they don't feel more of a guy. They're in between, you know what I mean? And we're trying to rationalize it psychologically, politically, but in reality, it's a spiritual energy. Like if you were look at your astrological chart, you would see where it's coming from. Like I could see if someone prefers guys over girls, or if someone is in that perfect state of like the border of feminine masculine energy. I could see that. We could see it as astrologers. you know and once you know where it's coming from, you accept that person more often instead of ostracizing them because they don't fit the natural mold. And a lot of the time they do the same thing too. Like I was attacked all the time when I was in that work environment where I was surrounded by trans, by non-binaries, by people who were gay, lesbian, fucking like plants, whatever the fuck their whole sexual preference
Yeah,
was.
to me, it's just like I feel like there's so many names, so many
Furries,
pronouns.
whatever. But I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to say is that I was ostracized for being me, for being a hetero. One would term normal, but I'm the majority population. I'm a guy that prefers the opposite sex, and I was ostracized by that. They would hate me just because I was a guy.
And that's where I'm going to. Like, why? Like, why can't, if you want me to accept you for whatever you want to identify as a plant, bet. But I'm straight. Why are you mad at me because I'm straight and because this is how I see things? This is how, at the end of the day, again, you could identify with whatever you want. But where are you born with a vagina or a penis? That's it. And if this is your preference, that's fine. But let me live my life. Like I was talking to Anthony, mentioned in the last podcast how I grew up, like Mario Lopez was one of my role models. And there was this interview that he did where they asked him and he basically gave his opinion. And I can't remember what his exact words were, but he was never disrespectful. And he just mentioned how his way of raising his kids is different. And it's not like that because in his eyes, there's male and females, right? Like you were tradition, right? Because biologically, biologically, scientifically, well, there's females and males, right? So when he said that it was this whole thing where everybody wanted to cancel him because this is how he thinks that this is how he's raising his kids, that's none of your business. How I raise my kids, how I live my life, that's my decision. Why do you want to enforce those beliefs on me and other people? And then why are we not allowed to say how we feel or what our preference is? But yet you guys are. The moment we say something like, which is why I'm saying, watch this with an open mind and an open heart. Because the moment that we start talking about these things, all of a sudden we become the enemies. Because we're still saying that scientifically and biologically, there are.
But those are separate things too. Besides your gender identity, besides again, your sexual preference.
They're not gonna want to hear this because they're still gonna go against the fact that, well, I don't care what you're saying. Like this is how I feel. Bet by all means, I understand. But let us also have our point of view and our opinion, and we should be able to have an open discussion about this. Right? And to me, it's first of all crazy that we're even talking about this, right?
Well, like I'm saying, it's a spiritual disconnect that a lot of people don't understand. That if you don't know who you are spiritually,
you're lost.
Period. You're lost. You're gonna succumb to these culture wars and this cancel culture, because cancel culture started because of
this, yes,
of the LGBTQ and trans rights. And I think at the end of the day, everyone has a free will to express themselves and to love who they love and be loved how they want to be loved.
The First Amendment, freedom of speech. Let me say whatever I want, the same way you're saying whatever you want. I'm allowed to say whatever I want.
But you
I'm
know,
allowed to have my perspective and my point of view. I shouldn't feel like I need to tippy toe around the subject. Why
yeah,
are we tippy toeing around the subject, right? Because
yeah.
that's what it becomes.
You know why I think it became such like a hot topic in cancel culture, because I do believe that it was meant to be politicized again to cause this division between society. And when did our sexual preference, just like our religion, had to be politicized? Like, no, it's something that it's personal. It's your own personal journey. The thing that politics fucked up, I personally believe, is it started throwing it out there in public schools. They started throwing it up in the work environment. Like, why do you have to?
Now
It's unnecessary. I think.
you're allowed to leave your kid's birth certificate blank and not put a sex so that they're able to pick what they want to be. And
I,
that to me is pushing something that like
it's supposed to, I think, an agenda.
an agenda. It's an
Where
agenda because what do you mean that my child when my child is older and then my child has a different preference, I will forever love my child no matter what my child decides they want
yeah.
to be, right? I do have a family member. I have a cousin who is trans. He transitioned to a female. So I understand. I have another cousin who came out as pansexual, which I guess that means you identify with just energies. You like energies. You're not looking at the sex, right? Still makes you gay because you're sleeping with men and you're sleeping with women, right?
Bisexual.
So you're bisexual. Call it bisexual. Call it what it is, right? Like that. That is. I feel like there's just so many extra names, extra pronouns, and it's pushing an agenda, bro. Like it's unnecessary.
Well, I think the agenda.
Oh, the birth certificate. Sorry, that's where I was at. Like, how? What do you mean? Like, we're leaving our birth certificate blank for the kids to decide? Like, no. Why are we pushing this agenda on little kids?
That's the thing where if you start to look and do your research in the sense of like why, I believe that they are experimenting on certain hormonal drugs, and these the government wants to find a way to have human trials to see exactly what these hormones do to the body, to see exactly whatever twisted research they want to know about. Because when your doctor starts prescribing a 13-year-old with hormonal drugs, or an 8-year-old, whatever, it's permanent, And so there was a lot of cases where the child who's starting to explore their own sexual identity, their own gender identity, their own sexual preference, they might have a curious thought like we all have had, maybe, you know what I mean? Oh, do I like the same sex or whatever? They don't know how to express these feelings of just, familiarity, right? Friendship, all that stuff. So they think they're attracted to the same sex, right? And they explain this to their doctor, and the doctor's like, "Oh, I think you might be trans," or you know what I mean, or
Try this,
yeah,
yeah.
try this, and they push these pharmaceutical drugs to, basically influence, these kids who are not ready to make those decisions for themselves.
They're
Really,
not.
they
Their brain
haven't
is
had
not
the right
developed.
experience. No, they haven't
No.
had the right experience to experience these things. But when you start forcing these things, a lot of people started coming out and regretting that their doctor gave them these prescription drugs that's changed their sex and changed their lives completely.
So it was actually like trans was actually an experiment, and it was years ago. There was a scientist, there was a doctor and a psychology that decided there were two twin boys, and we're gonna experiment on these twins, and we're gonna raise one of them as a female, the other one as a boy, and see how they feel. And then the female never felt like a female. The female she never understood why her body was different, why she looked the way she did, and it all started as an experiment. And yeah, it's like an agenda that they're trying to push, like all these pharmaceuticals, all these pills, all these things that they want to experiment. And no, let kids be kids, right? One of the things that I've also noticed a lot, and also based on my experience and my friends, I have so many girlfriends with daughters that their daughters are 7, 8, 9, saying that they like girls. And when you ask them why they like girls, and this is like mind blowing because like females, we need to do better. When you ask them why they like girls and why they think they're gay, mind you, this is a 7, 8 year old. Oh, it's because their dad is a piece of shit, so they don't want to deal with boys because they're used to having that piece of shit male role model in their life. And it's so many of my homegirls, and I have told them the same thing. Like, your daughter feels like this for this reason. Your daughter's telling you this. You need to do better with the men that you're dating, because now you're bringing shitty men over to your house. And your daughter's like, why would I want a man when I get along better with my homegirls, with my girlfriends? And these are 7, 8 year olds. That we think our kids don't care, our kids aren't realizing, our kids don't see. No, our kids see everything. They absorb everything. So I kid you not, I could tell you at least 10 of my friends, like more than 10 girls that have said the same thing. And their reason, and then when as they're growing up, they're like, no, I actually do like boys. It was just I had a shitty dad.
Yeah, absolutely. They have to live through. They have to develop, and that's the thing. When the government starts literally
getting involved,
projecting these agendas just to have. I believe it's truly just to have human trials of these drugs that they're producing, and also again divide and conquer and divide us. And create these cultural warfares, because if we're too busy, defending and fighting and not uniting, then we're easier to manipulate. Don't get me wrong. I accept that there's people out there that really, are too spirited and that prefer the same sex. I I've met them.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, pause. I understand that. So now you're two spirited, right? But it's not fair for you to identify as a woman and then think you can compete in the same sport that I'm competing at.
Absolutely. That's the politics doing like, being politically correct. Why are we, once you put politics into something, you'll know that this agenda is not, you're being manipulated.
Because that's not right. Like, I just had a conversation about this with a friend of mine. Literally, like about an hour ago, we were talking about this, and we started talking about even trans use in the restroom.
That was such a huge deal when it first started.
Listen, at the end of the day, the devil's the devil. Whether you're a man, whether you're a female, the devil is the devil. We have seen females raping boys, males raping girls. The devil is the devil. In my opinion, let's have a transgender bathroom. Something that's just for people who feel like they want to go into that bathroom, because the devil is the devil. And yeah, no, I'm not going to be okay with, because they're good. I've met a lot of trans people. Some of them are sweethearts. Some of them like really won't harm you. But there are some of them that really have a really, really evil spirit, right? Just like regular human beings. Like, there are people out here, you see their face, you don't know what's going on in their heart.
You know what's coming to me? I feel like a lot of people who are battling these, identity crisis, it's a spiritual lesson in this lifetime for a lot of people.
It is.
Because I believe that they were hypersexual people to the point where once you abuse that sexual energy, you no longer it starts corrupting your mind. Yeah,
because you've already done everything. You've with everyone, and
you've done so much that you're just like, all right, let me go to like Charlie Sheen, right? He was just like, yo, I've laid with so many women. I was like, what's on the other side of the menu? And then he corrupted, and then he got, unfortunately, he got AIDS. He got AIDS.
Yeah.
And it's I feel like a lot of it is that sexual corruption, the corrupting, abusing that sexual energy, that sometimes in your lifetime you have to heal that. You know what I mean? And it's a really tough energy to battle, because it's one of the strongest energies in the universe, our sexual energy.
Let me tell you, I know someone, because I've had a lot of people come out to me, right? Like, I've always been a safe space for people, and like, I love that. But I have someone who I know since this person was born, and he was always like, not feminine, but he was always like the life of the party. Like, in school, he was picked as the most popular kid, like, he was out there. And at 14, at 13, 14, they sent him to Ecuador, met up with a family member in Ecuador, and then this family member took him to a prostíbulo, to a whorehouse, right? So he could lose his virginity. Because that's like another thing. Hispanics is like, no, at 13, 14, let me take my son to a whorehouse so that, he can become a man, right? Which is so stupid. And then this led to this kid enjoying his time with this female and being over sexually active. That at one point he came up to me, he's like, I want to talk to you. I'm like, you're gay. He's like, no, that's not it. It was a whole different conversation about something else. A year later, he comes up to me crying because he left the house, and he's like, listen, I need to talk to you. I'm like, what's up? God, you say you're gay because like I already said this.
Why would you say that?
Because we're close. We're at that level where we're close.
Okay.
And like with me again, you're in open space. And at that moment, he was like, well, Diddy, you weren't wrong. I just didn't know how to admit it. I'm like, okay, I knew. It's okay. So we had this conversation, and this is when he's telling me, like, he's like, mind you, at this point, he must have been like 18. He's like, I've had so much sex with so many girls that, like, I'm curious. I'm like, I knew that was gonna happen. And I because the year before that, when I asked him if he was gay, I told him, I'm like, this is what you're doing. At some point, I see you becoming curious, right? Like, and maybe, and I knew that was already in his mind because it was what he came out to me a year later. He told me that when you said that, you hit it on the tail. I just didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to come out. I didn't know how to say that this is what I'm doing now because he was already doing it. But it's that you over sexualize sex. You're having so much sex with so many different women, and now you're like, okay, what's on the other side? And that's when you start becoming bi curious.
I think it's, like a lot of people have their own sexual journey that, it's a topic that makes a lot of people uncomfortable if you're not open to the conversation. There's nothing wrong with it. It's natural. You know what I mean? It's, at the end of the day, you see it everywhere in nature. Like that sexual energy is very powerful. And you have to know how to work your own sexual energy. And it is a process. It really is. And everyone to each their own, right?
To each their own. Just don't force your beliefs. It's like religion. Don't force your beliefs on me. I respect you. I understand you. I have nothing against whatever you want to be. But just don't force it on me. If you're saying you identify as a dog and you're a dog, but I'm seeing a whole freaking human, I'm gonna stick to what I'm seeing, and you can stick to what you feel. It's okay.
Like
just don't force it on me. I'm not. You can't force anyone to have your same perspective or your same point of view. And again, this cancel culture is ridiculous.
I think
so. Why don't we? What if we decided to cancel you because you're like you. A one percentage of the population.
I'm not gonna go that.
No. But I'm saying, but what if we did decide to come together and be like, no, let's cancel.
Yeah. Like, but what I wanted to say is, the reason why people are forcing it on other people is because spiritually they haven't accepted themselves.
They haven't.
That they're looking for external validation amongst peer society because they aren't 100% honest about who they really are inside. Because it's something that you have to come into acceptance on your own. The same way people switch religions, the same way people switch sexual preference and then come back again, same thing. It's a spiritual journey that you have to face in this lifetime. And if you're forcing other people to like, forcing you remember that you have to accept that some people, they don't share that same lifestyle with you, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you have to hate them. You could simply just understand that they're not gonna, or they're not gonna, And that's the thing. You have to remember, it's the sexual energy is so sacred. You have to respect people's sexual preference. Like I said, I really genuinely love gay people, trans, because they're so fun and they're so feminine.
Fun, yeah.
Like they're so open and free, and they're so brave.
Yeah.
You know,
they are brave
because it takes a lot to go against the grain and also be true to yourself and have a good time. You know what I mean? And I know they go through a lot in society. Again, we all could have separate gender identity, separate gender roles, separate sexual preferences. Remember, sexual preference and gender is two different. And then you have the biological of what it is. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, like the sexual energy, when you fuse it, it's supposed to create another life. You know what I mean? Like that's the biological standpoint. That's the way nature, like the masculine and feminine unite, and they create, some life. They create life. Imagine that. Again, some people don't want to have kids. Like I'm okay not having kids. You know what I mean? And I'm a straight hetero.
And that's another thing, like forcing, like, because it is like society expects you to have kids, expects you, like, because if you don't, you just not fulfilling your role. And again, everybody's here with a different role. Not everybody's meant to have kids. My dad was very big on like always throwing that in my face too. Like in my family, me training jiu-jitsu, that's a man's sport. What am I doing in a man's world? Like that, I don't belong there, right? And they'll say that, but like my father's very verbal about that. And the last time he asked me for that, like he said, it was with an attitude. So he said, you haven't even made me a grandfather yet. Bro, the moment he said that, I looked at him and I was like, wow, let me tell you something. I already was raised without a dad and without a mother. I don't want that for my kid. And first of all, it's not as easy as simple as like go open your legs and have kids by anyone. Because one of the things that everyone who I know who has kids has told me is like, be careful, pick your partner wisely.
Absolutely.
Pick your partner wisely. And not just that. My homegirls and my guy friends, they love their kids. They love their kids. But one of the things they're very verbal with is like, Daisy, don't. If you haven't had kids, don't, because it's hard. It is not easy. So when my dad said that to me the last time, I was like, I already grew up without a dad and a mom. So I'm not trying to do the same thing to my kid. And it's not as simple as opening my legs. He never again asked me for a grandchild. Because it's true, like he wasn't there. You were never. What, you think it's just simple? Go have. Who's gonna take care of my kid? Who's gonna pay my bills? What if I'm not in the right situation? Like you. What if? First of all, what if I can't have kids? That's none of your business either. So stop asking people, because it could be one of those things where he can't have kids or I can't have kids, and we might not even want to talk about it. No, I'm okay. We're okay.
No, the thing is, what we're trying to say is that as human consciousness is evolving, society needs to evolve with our mentality, our consciousness. So we have to start realizing that we are so diverse, we are so and that's what makes humanity in this life beautiful. Your spiritual journey, your spiritual awakenings, and your spiritual, sexual energy is yours to explore. It's yours to, you don't force it on anybody. And remember that the politics,
don't force it.
The politics is what is gonna corrupt the government. It's gonna try to govern your mind. Live
the government is not your friend.
You know what I mean? And it's in the word government, govern mind. Listen to your soul, listen to your spirit. Don't knock your intuition. Don't deny your intuition. It's there for a reason. It's our sixth sense.
Be true to yourself, bro, because at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter what other people see you as long as you know who you are.
Right.
You have to know who you are. Whether you identify as him, her, them, they, a plant, just be in your spirit. Be who you are. The moment, again, like you said, you start forcing it on people is because you're not sure of who you are. That you feel like you got to prove it to others. What are you trying to prove?
Your vibe attracts your tribe. So if you really are 100%, acceptance of who you are, you will start attracting, those, people that are meant for you to fulfill those needs, and your energy will see you, and love you for how you want to be loved, and accept you for who you love. You don't need the whole world to you just need yourself, and then you start, attracting it. I truly believe that. And again, at the end of the day, know thyself is the most powerful axiom in the spiritual world. You have to know yourself, and that takes time. It takes experience. Be patient with yourself,
because we're constantly evolving, so we're not the same person. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I'm getting to know the new Daisy, right? Like, and we're constantly evolving. So just get to really know yourself. Be true to yourself. Be authentic.
Yeah.
And don't take things to the heart. Like, nothing here is that serious. At the end of the day, we're all gonna die.
Yeah. At the end of the day, right. So again, it was. I feel like this conversation is very. People try to avoid it. Here in Spirit Speaks, we try to let our spirit speak. And actually say what's in the consciousness, what's in the subconsciousness, what's in the global consciousness. And we hope that this is a safe space again, where everyone's invited, color, creed, gender, creature, whatever, plants, rock.
I just don't know, as a plant, how you're going to listen to this and watch this.
Plants could feel the vibration. I'm sure this yucca plant is feeling something.
I'm a plant, yeah, definitely.
But nonetheless, I hope that you enjoyed this talk. We appreciate you, sticking around.
We love you all.
And we love you all. And thank you. And until next time, we're going to end this session with some good vibration. Ready, go.
Chocolate.
Sweaty ass hands.
So sweaty, bro.
I like
It's
it.
so hot.
I'm not the only one sweaty
It's
hands.
so hot, yeah. But that's why I kept moving my legs around. I was like, I need some air or something.